Welcome to the Northeast Kingdom Voice. I'm your host, Scott Wheeler. This is part 2 of a 2-part series with Terry Lucas, a local boy who made it big in the worldwide computer world. Welcome to the show again,
Thanks,
Terry. The first segment we talked a little bit about you, how you went from 1978 graduate of North Country High School, and much to my surprise and a lot of people's surprise, despite you being brilliant, you chose a different path. You didn't go to college.
That's right. I don't think I would recommend it for people if you wanted to be a software engineer.
Right. But you wouldn't recommend not going, you're saying?
I wouldn't recommend not going on.
Right.
But for some people, you don't need a college education. And for many jobs, you don't need a college education. Trade schools, or even learning on the job, a lot of people can be very successful. And I don't mean rich either. I mean successful with families and having kids and raising a family. That's success in my mind.
So, how do you, you're 62?
Yes.
And I'm 57, but your brain seems to be elastic enough to still be able to grasp all this stuff. Have you started slipping up on technology yet?
Not yet, but there is a difference. I mean, as I get older, my concentration skills aren't what they used to be.
Right.
And right now, I mean, I've worked 45 years in the industry. Pretty much everything that's been built, I had some piece in it. I know how it works. I don't even have to look at the manuals. I can understand how it works. That's going to disappear, I'm sure, in 5-10 years.
Now, do you have grandchildren yet?
Not yet.
Well, when you have grandchildren, you're going to realize that it's amazing. By the time they're like 3 or 4, I think they have a better grasp on just technology than most of our generation had when we were in high school and beyond. And because the Kelby, who is recording this segment, she's 19. And I look at her and Todd, the producer of this show, and the head of this station. He's in his 40s, I'm in my 50s, and we're looking at her, and she can just learn bang, bang, bang. Now, do you work? I know you're pretty much retired now, but were you working with kids by the time you're retired?
Oh yeah. I mean, I was the kid when I started.
Right.
Everybody else was 40. They were usually statisticians, physicists. Those were the people that were programming computers at the time, and or philosophers, oddly enough. But when I got to be 50, I was no longer the youngest. Everybody else was in their 20s. And at Google, I think the average age is probably 25, 27. I was 62, but I'd been there 18, 19 years. So, I was very ancient. So
how did they look at you, these youngsters? Did they look at you as this great sage or this antique to a gone by time?
No, Google was different. Most other companies, that's probably how it would have been. Microsoft certainly would have been that way. Apple to some extent, but Google was very different. Google was, that's what I liked about Google. It's the longest I ever worked at any company. Was whoever had the better idea won. It didn't matter if you were the 50-year-old or the 18-year-old. And I like that. I like the fact that merit is what decides good or bad, not seniority, not what college I went to, not who my parents were. That to me, when you talk about American dream, that's the American dream. That it's who has the better mousetrack, who has the better idea.
So now you've made your fortune. You are financially you are set for life, and you live in Washington State, isn't? And
that's right.
Then you've moved back here part time, but you could just want to spend your retirement just basking in your success, and but you don't want to do that. You want to actually try to help the people of your home region.
Yeah, I did. I mean, I did a lot of things when I was in Washington State. We've lived there for almost 25 years, and maybe a little over 25. And I was on a bunch of boards. I tried to do a bunch of things with inner city schools. Um, you know, some of it worked, some of it didn't work so well. And I came to the conclusion that, I know a lot about this area. I know a lot about the people of this area and the kids. And maybe I haven't lived here for 45 years, but I still have family here. Many generations, just like you. I'm 6, 7 generations Vermonter. And I think I have something that I can help to give back. And to me, I care a lot about education. I don't mean education in the sense of going to college. I mean finding your gift, using that gift to its fullest, and becoming a good citizen of society, of the country, of the county, of the city that you're in. And to do that, as a young boy growing up, I thought I didn't realize I was poor. I didn't realize, I lived in a tiny little town. I didn't realize, I looked at it, I had limitless possibilities.
Right.
I wanted to learn. I always loved learning. And, that's what I want to make sure kids understand. I think when you see the internet and TV now, people seem to think, I'm in this little thing, I'm worthless. I'm not going to get anything done. No one cares what I think, what I want to do. And that's wrong, we have a different way of thinking and looking at things than a lot of other places in this country. And, I think the big thing is grit. And I've always believed that grit is intelligence is important, hard work's important, but you're going to have lots of problems in life. You're going to have things that didn't work well. You may think I'm a success. Believe me, I've had things I worked on in software which were just wrong. It didn't work well. I had to, I'm then redoing it all, throwing it away, starting all over again. Sometimes you do it 2 or 3 times, especially if you're building something for the first time and you don't know how it's going to perform. And you better have some grit. I've seen people that, with Ivy League college educations, that if they fail, they've never failed before. And if they fail, they don't know what to do. They sort of shut down. And, I think people here, you have to, when it's farmers, you have to have that stick to it. If that's, you've got nature hitting you. You've got the environment. You've got weather and all the things, the snow. You got to learn how to be self-sufficient. And I think that's the thing that when I look at northern Vermont, it's, you don't see people that always want a handout in general. You see people that, they take their lot in life, whatever is passed to them, and they figure out how to make lemonade out of the lemons that are happening. And I think that's important.
I think, though, that has changed a bit over the last few decades, where I'd like to think that there's a lot of people who still understand the American dream is so accessible, but I think sometimes people get so, especially younger people, get so pounded down by what they see on the news, which is a lot of times it's for ratings. It's not really reality, or if it is reality, just a tiny little sliver of reality, and I think they really get discouraged. And then you have politicians where you need us to survive instead of trying to encourage you to. And I think some people have just become just so discouraged when you and I grew up pretty much the same and one street apart. But if I think about whatever you define success is, those two streets filled with struggling people, I don't know anybody. We may have been struggling, but everybody worked. And maybe they were in fields that they didn't. Maybe they were in fields that they weren't making a lot of money in, but they were working. And I look at the Carter family. I grew up I grew up near the Carters, and I'm still dear friends with them. And yeah, they made life interesting down in the Hollow, but the next generation now have taken that Carter work ethic, and they have done great things with their lives. They have built restaurants, they have built other businesses, and even like Arctic refrigeration has this, building a big plant and such. And so while we may have been poor, we had a work ethic. And because there's a big difference if the welfare poor, the ones who've not worked for generations, than the working poor, both face different challenges.
Yeah, I think you're right. I mean, it's a different era too. I mean, things were a lot cheaper.
Right.
People didn't have, when you see TV and the internet now, everybody thinks they're going to have a EV car or the top TV. We didn't have anything like that, and I didn't really realize I didn't have the things that were big back then. My parents didn't even have a washing machine. They had some hand wringing washing machine, and I didn't know. Didn't really think much about it. But I also think imagination is important, like we were talking about. Being able to go out and play, and not just be on a computer, doing the games. I mean, they're fun. I'm not saying you shouldn't do those things, but the bulk of being a kid is imagining, doing things, trying things out, not being worried that I'm going to do something stupid. And I remember playing with. I'm not saying you should play with fire, but I remember one of my neighbors, we had a can, we were putting matches in, and I think I burnt my fingers. I learned you don't mess with that kind of stuff pretty quickly. But, I think those are really important. And also, that, you can see your parents struggle. You see how hard they work, and you realize that, you don't take things for granted.
Right.
And, it is sad to see, that everybody thinks, young people, I see, even at Google I would see it, they get their first job out of college, and they think they're going to make hundreds of thousands of dollars a year. And you should be able to make what you're worth, what that company thinks you're worth. But you're not. Everybody thinks they're going to be, a senior engineer like I was at Google after being there for 18 years and 45 years in the business.
Right.
You don't just at 24 become making millions of dollars. That just doesn't happen. You have to slowly work your way up. And everybody thinks it's instant, and nothing. I don't think instant is a bad thing. It's bad in business. It's bad for your life. It's bad for lots of things.
Right. So you've retired here, during the summer months, and actually we met through my writing, and just through our mutual growing up, and you've been picking my brains because I really appreciate you. The diversity of people that you pick the brains of, because I hate to say this, community leaders are some people you want to talk to, but they're not necessarily the best people either. I don't mean just in Newport, I mean in general, because I think sometimes they have their own skewed views of reality, as we probably all do. But I do appreciate the fact that, I think, that there's me that you pick my brain, and I think another one is now your summertime neighbor, Jimmy and Kim Campbell. So we're from similar worlds, but at the same time very different worlds.
Oh yeah, I mean, it's a lot of people. As I try to get reconnected into community here, there's a lot of people that have a lot of knowledge that I grew up. I worked in a very high tech area. I knew a lot of very rich people, very powerful people, but that's not where I want to live. Right. I want to live here, and I want to understand how I can reconnect in this community to help make a difference.
Right. Yeah, and I also know, as we've talked, then you have to figure out the people who actually do versus talk, because there's a big difference. Like, I'm sure even in your business, you knew that there were the people who talked about doing versus doing, and I think we've talked about that here in Newport, the greater region, about the people who are actually doing things, like whether it be Dina Gray, the owner of the East Side, or Tina Bliss, who is the founder of the Hoagies chain, and then she used to own Pie and Pasta, and now she has the T-Bar, and the people who really are, and Tina Bliss is one of us, one of the Skunk Hollow crew.
Oh, she? Yeah,
yes,
that's right.
Tina Carter. Mm-hmm. And so there's those people, but then there's the one thing I know we talked about. You want to invest in the area, but you don't want to invest in one meeting after another meeting after another meeting.
No, I want to understand. One, I'm a big believer in kids and teaching kids. I'm the old give a person a fish versus teaching them how to fish. I think that's a big thing. Right. And my parents certainly believed in that. And I'm sure most parents I know around here believe that way. And, so I'm trying to understand before I do anything, because you guys, the people who live here, know what the problems are. They have some idea maybe how to fix it. And I'd like to understand that first before and I'm not going to come in with a sledgehammer and start saying, boom, I want you to do this, boom, I think we need to. What do I know? I mean, I don't know much. I know some things, but it's a lot I don't know. And
I was telling you, you ought to make one stop over to the Career Center where I really think they'd love to hear your story, the Career Center students particularly, but Gwen Bailey Rowe, who heads it up, I think that would be one area just to, because they have North Country has a great Career Center program, and I know for the people who want every kid to go to college, maybe they don't appreciate it. Well, my kids followed the traditional college route, but they also took career classes, and while one is an accountant, one works in nuclear weapons, the other one, she has her teaching degree, but they have a big family in their position and have her not work. The bottom line is they all really excelled, yes, in their academics, but it's the Career Center classes that I think that have really helped them actually thrive in their chosen careers.
Well, I think that's true. I think I remember it was the C Wing when I was a kid.
C Wing, and that wasn't that actually, being C Wing ended up not being a positive thing.
No, people. It was it's where the mechanic shop was. Yeah. It's woodworking. I took classes there in typing, which turned out to be.
Who did you have, Mrs. Hunt?
No, it was a gentleman. I forget his name. Was it? He was a driver's ed teacher too. Jerry
Clifford.
I think it was Mr. Clifford.
Mr. Clifford.
I think it might have been Mr. Clifford. But I learned how to type, and that turned out to be really important as a programmer, that I can type really fast and without looking at my fingers. And I took classes in electronics there because I built a laser for the Vermont Science Fair that we got first place in when I was a kid, and I had to learn how to do machine shop work and some electric work to polish the tubes for the laser.
Oh yeah. So actually, it's amazing. We only have like 10, 12 minutes left already. What are some of the things that you want to do here? What do you think this area needs from what you can see and what you've been hearing?
Well, I love reading your magazine. I love reading your books. And one of the reasons I love it is I look at the heyday of Newport and the heyday of this area. And the heyday of the area is this environment, this lake, this the pristineness of this whole county, and people still want that. I don't care if you're from the 1800s or the 21st century. I think you still want it, and I think Newport in the Northeast Kingdom has to figure out a way to make this profitable, lucrative again, so that people here can have a decent living. And when I look at the hole on Main Street. I guess a courthouse might be nice. I think it's a waste of a good piece of real estate. You need to get the people from the cities back up here. They want to come up here. They don't want to be in the cities. And we need to figure out a way to make the vacations and the restaurants and the businesses, kind of like what Dina Gray did and other people have been able to do. But then the other thing, I think that boat is interesting from a teaching point of view. And like I said, I was interested in teaching kids.
Right.
There's some stuff that I know the MCA, I think they're called, the Maritime Community Organization here, with the Northern Star, where kids can learn biology, learn about the watershed, learn about the lake, how they can impact the environment here, because we don't want to lose that thing. That lake that's our crown jewels. That's really special to this area, and we need to make sure we keep that pristine, not just for the people that live on the lake, but all of us. That's sort of that's the goose that laid the golden egg for us, I think.
Right. I think one thing is I was talking to Gertrude Essoff. Gertrude.
I worked for her husband, Louis Essoff.
Yeah, and Gertrude is 100, and she just had her 100th birthday, and she's convinced that She said a lot of older people don't like to see younger people step into a lot of older people don't like to relinquish the reins. And she feels, particularly in Newport, she was saying that it's time for some people to now step aside. They've done their job. And she said it's time for some of the younger people with new ideas, to step up and take the reins, because you have like Vero and Andrea Spates. I'm gonna forget. I forget her married name. I'm sorry, Andrea. Carbine. There we go. Okay. They've started Wednesdays on the waterfront, and
which is wonderful. I went there. It's beautiful.
And you take some of these younger people, and they're really doing a lot of good things. And now it's time for some of them, that generation, to really step up and become the leaders of the city and of the region, because there is a time and place for people like us. We don't have to be in museums or anything.
No, we have wisdom. We have some amount of wisdom. We know what not to do anymore. We know the mistakes that you can make. But I had the same problem with computers. I did all my invention in my 20s and 30s.
Right.
I had no more inventions after the age of 40. Really, I lived off those inventions. And the producer here,
Kelby.
She has no fear. She has a certain idea of how computers work. My idea was three refrigerators, and the things that didn't work with 3 refrigerator-sized computers. I helped solve some of those problems, but I'm not going to solve the next world problems, because I have a mindset now that's kind of stuck.
Right.
And she doesn't. And the young people don't have that stuck mindset. We need their energy. We need their innovation.
Right.
You're not going to get it from me.
Right.
Maybe not from you either.
No. I look at particularly Newport. I live in Derby, but my roots are in Newport, and I look at it as, I think in many ways it's a beautiful city. Now, does it have its issues? Yeah, it does. The one thing I will tell you that is so unbecoming is whenever we get sometimes national attention because of like the EB5 thing, or I bring, some media ask me to give tours. It's amazing how many people, including some of its leaders, will suddenly see a camera and boo-hoo about the plight. Boo-hooing does not get you anywhere. Crying in your beer, it may have felt good, but it's never gotten you anywhere, has it?
Yeah, you better pick yourself up and figure out what the next step's going to be.
Right.
My parents did that to me. My grandfather. I mean, that's just you better figure out life quick.
So we're almost done, but I know even after throughout the summer, I'm sure we'll be getting together, and I'm sure you're going to keep picking people's brains. But is there one big thing you would like to accomplish this year, or at least get the ball rolling? Or
yeah, I've been doing a lot of work with Doug Coots, who's involved with that member from the MCA, which is the boat and education, which is how do we get like the Rubenstein, which is in Champlain, a biology teachers to teach kids here from elementary school up around the whole area, biology, about the lake, about STEM, about science. I think that's kind of my little thing I'm involved with right now. And how do we get the boat to also be successful? Because that's sort of a conduit for there's the commercial part of it, but then there's the education part of it, and then that gateway center. I think that's something that I think needs to be utilized.
Yes, it's never really been utilized to its potential.
Yeah, and I think it could be utilized with having teaching on the second floor, where kids can go during the whole year for field trips to learn about biology, and we can have maybe a couple biologists that are doing research there, people renting it out. The first floor, I know Doug and MCA are doing a lot of work figuring out how they can have whether it's wine tasting or little museums on the local culture, the history. I think that's how to just have. It's a beautiful building, but if you're not using it, what's the point of it? You better have somebody figuring out how to use it. I think it'd be nice if Newport and the leaders here could figure out how to get some kind of synergy with a guy like, the MCA folks to get, you're helping kids, you're helping to make that building be profitable, or at least break even, instead of, I'm sure it's a negative right now because not many people use it.
All of my kids, well, they live in areas where they always talk, well, we're going to go to the science museum with their kids. And there are these hands-on science museums. It's and it's not like going to the museum where you're just seeing, looking at things. And these are hands-on. Like when I go over to Marquette, Michigan, it's this big building with all these projects where kids can learn. And because they are on Lake Superior, you have also elements of that museum which pertains to the lake and its history and culture and,
I agree. I think kids need a lot of hands-on kinds of things. And, this thing that I know Doug and the MCA is doing with Doug Coots is to get microscopes, have them collect the plankton, whether it's phytoplankton or zooplankton, look at it, understand how the ecosystem works, where the water comes from. Most people don't realize the water comes from Barton, the Black River, and Clyde, and it goes north. It doesn't go south.
Right.
There's a Laurentine Glacier that took place.
Yeah, right.
A long time ago.
One thing about the lake that I'm is interesting. There was a book written by Bullock back turn of the early part of the last century, and it's forever skewed the meaning of the lake. It was called Beautiful Waters.
Beautiful book.
And it was, but the thing is suddenly it started appearing. That's what Lake Memphremagog means. No, that's the romanticized version, because every once in a while I get blowback because I like to write history, and sometimes history isn't pretty. Well, the real meaning of Lake Memphremagog isn't quite as romantic. It means like vast expanse of water in Abenaki. I actually, when I have an Abenaki question, I'll actually call up I'll contact the Abenaki reservation at Odanak, and that's where I use as my definitive answers when it comes to well, maybe not definitive, but it's pretty close. Mm-hmm. So I just contact the reservation, and their archivist and historian is able to put some things to rest for me. And sometimes it's some of the facts that I come out with doesn't always set well because they're not quite as pretty. And
well, life's not pretty. Life,
no,
it never is. And that's what makes history interesting.
Yeah. Hey, it was great having you come on, and we're going to get you back on here, especially after one of your ideas bears fruit. Like I hope for the best for the Northern Star, and I think I think Rick DeRoshi really got that thing started in the right direction, and I think now if it continues forward, because most of the other, we reflect back on the tour boat days, but a lot of times we don't realize why those days ended. It was a series of factors, but it's tough to operate a boat up here, and then
it was tough to operate back then.
Right, that's what I'm saying.
Well.
And that's what I'm saying. Once you realize that, then you can move forward and say, okay, they failed, but that doesn't mean we're going to fail, or to succeed, we are going to do this. And I think that I really do think Rick really put that boat on the right track. I haven't been on it this year just because of, as you know, I've had some life events with the passing of my wife, so I haven't been on it this year. So
yeah, it's like everything. Even in the business I came from, innovators. If you want to be an innovator and you don't have toughness, the innovators always get the arrows, whether you like it or not. Guys like Rick, anybody who is the first to do something, and they're usually not the ones that succeed. They're first because they figured out a way of something that's interesting to do,
Yeah.
but they haven't figured out the way of how to make it profitable, where it can be long-standing
Yeah.
kind of business. And that's where, you know, you need sort of the next generation, and then the next one after that to
Right,
figure out, you know, how you change it a little bit, because it's a great idea, but you got to make it so it can be self-sufficient.
Right, and that's it. So, okay, well, thank you for coming on.
Thank you. I love Newport. I love the area. You know, I grew up here, and I think it still has a lot to offer. That's why I'm back.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
And thank you to the viewers for tuning in to another segment of the Northeast Kingdom Voice.